Hello, this is Ms. Augustine, and this is a lecture for my Tuesday, November 10th Art Appreciation course. And for the students, I want to give an in-depth lecture about data, which I feel is important for this class to know about. Data is a period of art that is sometimes ostracized and often overlooked. In 1916, as little by little countries in Europe were slowly being led into what became World War I, there were a group of artists who strove to profess their neutrality in strange ways. They protested everything, including the war, politicians, the status quo, even expressionism. It was more a manifestation of ideas than an art movement. In 1916, this contingent of artists, which included dancers, singers, poets, and puppeteers, all kinds of performers, were featured at a Cabaret Voltaire in Zurich, Switzerland. They were noticed by the public, rowdy, indecent, callous, satirical, and downright disgusting. Their audience, let's just say, the audience was amazed. Let's just say they were like Saturday Night Live on steroids. Well, perplexing as this might be in just saying they didn't believe in anything, they were a provocative group of protesters. Not much is written in books about their accomplishments, and several writers produced manifestos, and there were collaborations among different Dada artists. One of the artists, Jean Arp, he wanted to revitalize art and do away with objective painting and sculpture. Much of the information I'm talking about in the quotes that are taken, let me get this over here, is taken from this book, Performance Art by Rose Lee Goldberg. This was a book that I had in my graduate course at Wilson College, where it was totally about performance art, and I never knew anything about it before. But when I reference the material and the information, that is really coming from that book and from that college course. So you're getting an insight into what I learned in college. The Cabaret Voltaire only lasted 5 months, but it left an impression on the audiences. Later on, Dada had a magazine and an art gallery which featured talks. It was kind of a continuation of the same type of cabaret. This art gallery at night became a party place. Well, they called them soirees. And Hugo Ball, this was the name of one of the leaders of Dada, put it this way, and this is on page 66 of that book. In the evenings, the candlelit Kandinsky room is a club for the most esoteric philosophies. He continued, there was a boundless readiness for storytelling and exaggeration, a readiness that has become principle. Absolute dance, absolute poetry, absolute art. What is meant is that a minimum of impressions is enough to evoke unusual images. And that was only what happened in Switzerland. The Dada movement then reached into Berlin, Germany. In Berlin, they wanted also to squash expressionism and abstract art. They put up obnoxious slogans on posters throughout the city, such as, Dada kicks you in the behind and you like it. All right, it was pretty bizarre. Propaganda was their cup of tea, and they served up that cup for the proletariat. They were progressive anarchist, to say the least. Now, in France, Marcel Duchamp was introduced his ready-mades, and also, if you remember, the urinal that is called Fountain was one of his sculptures that was there. And as part of the avant-garde group in New York, well, besides in France, what had happened, I'm getting ahead of myself, what had happened that besides European cities, Dada came to New York City, USA, and Marcel Duchamp had moved there. And now he was part of an avant-garde artist group in New York, but he still supported Dada. So yes, their philosophies were changing, but Dada was now it influenced them, but it was now ending. So it was an influence, and as has been said, the movement of surrealism grew out of Dada. So that's where we go back to surrealism, and in our textbook, where it says, like Dada, surrealism was not a style, but a way of life. You might say that French Dadists of the early 1920s inspired surrealist ideas. But surrealism was not just in painting and sculpture, but it involved the theories of Freud and the unconscious. In 1925, the surrealist movement gained notoriety with the surrealist person who was a very important person, with the surrealist Andre Breton. Breton was the writer of the Surrealist Manifesto. He was consumed by the image of dreams, and this influenced not only his writings and other writings, but other performances as well. Composer Eric Satie contributed to the Surrealist movement, and other artists like Duchamp and Man Ray also took part in a performance called Relache, Relache, in New York in 1924. And it was a very bizarre presentation. Psychological ideas merged with art and with all the other arts. Salvador Dali was the extraordinary artist who developed these ideas into his paintings. Now, searching for logic in surrealist art is as difficult as searching for logic in a dream. This is pointed out in our textbook, and it describes the painting Oil on Wood assemblage of Max Ernst. And Max Ernst, on page 505, it was called Two Children Threatened by a Nightingale. He said that he dreamt it, and he saw that in that dream. That's what he created. Again, surrealism relied heavily on the unconscious and on highly unlogical images and things. I had a little bit, too, to share with you about Max Ernst. This was from the American Fine Art magazine. It's backwards, but you saw some of these in class the other day. This is about from an article called Monumental Triad, and it's about Ernst. He was born in Germany and studied art there. He was drafted into the army in World War I and was traumatized by the event and by politics that brought it about. He wrote, On the 1st of August 1914, M, meaning Max, E, Ernst, died. He was resurrected on the 11th of November 1918. Now that's what he wrote. They were his words. He became an iconoclast, creating non-representational, here I go again, non-representational works that challenged tradition. He was interested in the artwork of the mentally ill and in the dream theories of Sigmund Freud, which he used to delve into his subconscious and the source of his own creativity. He became a pioneer of the data movement that rebelled against the conformity in politics and society that had brought about the violence of World War I. The poet Tristan Tarza wrote, "The beginnings of Dada were not the beginnings of art, but of disgust." Andre Breton's first Surrealist Manifesto was published in 1924, and Ernst became one of the principal proponents of Surrealism. So you see how data influenced these artists. And I have a picture of Max Ernst's work. Oh, this is one of my art books here. This is called Forêt et Soleil, and it's French, Foret et Soleil, Soleil. And if you can see it, it's heavy duty in reds and shows a scene, pretty kind of a scary scene, not very comforting at all, if you can see that. He was a German painter and leading surrealist. So you have Max Ernst to see his work. Oh, let me put this back. Well, now we have to move on. Also in our textbook on the same page, Merritt Oppenheim juxtaposed items to construct his lunches in fur. Now, this is a cup and saucer and spoon, all covered in fur. So there's a lot of unconscious sexual underpinnings of Freud's theories involved and represented in this artwork. Another artist, Jean Moreau, on page 506, also utilized the importance of dreams. As seen in our textbook, Moreau's painting, Carnival of the Harlequin, is just all about movement, but also magical abstract forms seem to dance wildly in the painting. A fantasy world of insects, fish, and animals appear. It definitely expresses surrealist images of illogical things gathered together. The last artist, oh, wait a minute, I think I have a Moreau. I do. I have another, Jean Moreau. I know you've got one in a picture of his painting, but this is another painting. Personnage Olezu Etoiles, Etoiles. Again, it's by French. This was made later on in 1974, but he was still continuing with the figures and this very strange little squiggly images and shapes that he used in his artwork. That's Jean Moreau. Oh, the next artist. At last, I'd like to talk about Salvador Dali. Now, he perhaps is the most eccentric and tantalizing icon of surrealist art. On page 506, the painting Persistence of Memory illustrates his dream imagery. And the painting, as our book says, forms are precise and meticulous, super realistic, yet the forms could not possibly be real. The painting is bleak with several limp, melting watches and has the image of a fetal type creature. And some say that this is reference to Salvador Dali himself. Well, it has been researched and written that Dali's paintings became associated with three general themes, and this is from a website, www.biography.com. His three general themes are man's universe and sensations, sexual symbolism, and third, ideographic imagery. So ideas, but graphic imagery of those. I wanted to tell you a story that years ago, in my undergrad years, I knew a friend who was a wonderful artist, a Brazilian woman, who said she personally knew Salvador Dali and was one of his followers. Now, I'm not at liberty to say how intimately they knew each other, but she told me a lot about how many drugs were involved. So maybe this influenced his paintings too. Maybe it wasn't just dreams. He portrayed reality as a non-realistic world. Surreal is just that, beyond reality. And in his painting, Christ of St. John of the Cross, now this was from a website, totallyhistory.com. It says that there is a strong angle that one views the Christ on the cross from above. It's been said he painted the image of Christ on the cross this way, as if God was looking down at him from heaven. Now, angles and geometry, design, that type of design grounds the image of Christ on the cross. It is some 80.7 inches by 43.07 inches and is exhibited, it stays in a museum in Glasgow, Scotland. But some years ago, a traveling exhibit of the Salvador Dali works came to the United States, and one of the stops was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, and I was lucky enough to get a ticket to go and see his works. And at the exhibition, I stood in front of this 6 by 6.5 foot large, high masterpiece, and I became completely involved with it. This St. John of the Cross piece, it just took my breath away, and as many of his paintings also did on that day. Well, that's about it for my lecture. I wanted to say, please make sure you see the questions that are in my email, and there are a couple attachments also. And just continue. I know I said to page 508, that goes into another era of art, but just continue reading to the end of the chapter, okay? And I'll have another video for you for Thursday's class. All right, thank you so much. See you then.